morning. My name is Brandi Erickson.
And I'm Randy Erickson.
I told you could interrupt anytime. And we came to share a little bit about our testimony and some of the really neat things that the Lord has done in our life. I want to kind of also tell you a little bit about how Stories of Grace came about. In the fall of 2019, I was really sick, and it was hard for me to come to church. In my body, I was very sick, and sounds, noises, people in general, smells, everything. It was so hard for me, and I couldn't come to church. But as I started to get better, closer towards the holidays, I was able to come in and be a part of the congregation and listen to the music and not be sick. And one Sunday, I felt impressed to come and talk to Pastor Andy about testimonies, because I was at a point in my life where I really needed to hear how God was moving and answering prayers. And so I came up to Pastor Andy. He hadn't been here very long, and I'm sure he's had a lot of people tell him, what he needs to do. But I came up to him and I said, Pastor Andy, I said, we need to have testimonies. I said, I need to hear how God is moving in people's lives and how he's answering prayers, because I need answers to prayers myself, and I need to hear this. And so he said, well, Brandi, we do that on Wednesday nights. And at the time, I wasn't coming to church on Wednesday nights, and I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I need to come on church on Wednesday night. But, growing up in my church, we did testimonies. Here at Open Door, I don't know if any of you remember, but Pastor Russ did a sermon series called, actually it wasn't sermon series, it was a video series that was produced by Jim Cymbala.
Yes.
From Brooklyn Tabernacle Church in New York, or Brooklyn, New York.
Right. And
it was called Fresh Wind, Fresh Fire, and it was kind of a history of his church and how it came to be. And they're in a very urban area there, city of Brooklyn, and how people began to come to Christ, and it was through the Holy Spirit's power that people were being radically saved, out of so many dark things, drug addiction, prostitution, alcoholism, abuse, and people were sharing their stories in that series, Fresh Wind, Fresh Fire. They were talking about the way that God had just radically changed their lives. And I remembered that. And that was kind of behind that too, that just that need and that desire to hear how God is moving and working in people's lives, and how it's still happening every day all around us. Blessings and good things are happening. And so that's kind of how Stories of Grace was born. And I know that there have been so many of you that have shared your stories, and they have been phenomenal, amazing.
Right. Yes.
And we want to thank you, because they have meant so much to us. And I know they've meant so much to all of you. And I come as an encourager today, and to encourage you to share your story. And it doesn't necessarily have to be, sharing about your deepest, darkest, most terrible times in your life, although I know some of us, we've shared about those times and how the Lord has just brought us up out of the pit. But your story can also be about the good things that the Lord has done in your life, the blessings, the miracles that he's performed, and how he's still doing it, that God is still on the throne. Amen. He is still moving. He is still answering prayers. And that's a story too. And it can be shared, because it's like Pastor said, one, who are we neighboring? And two, that we need to be salt and light. And we can be salt and light by sharing about these blessings and these answers to prayer and the miracles that the Lord has done in our life. Right. And I just think it's a neat way to share our story, our testimony. So we thought, poor Randy, he got voluntold this morning at 6:35 in the morning that he was coming with me to share a little bit about some good things that the Lord has done for us in our life. Right. And we thought we would start with, what are we going to start with? We're going to start with
I think start at the start. So when we got married, we had the service, we had the the processional line. Brandi and I were lined up with our families, and friends were coming through and greeting us and congratulating us. And one of my friends from high school, John Oster, I knew him through part of high school, through college. He was in a situation where he needed a car. And I was in a situation then at that time where I was getting another car. Well, I sold the car to him for monthly payments, and he made one, maybe two, and just wasn't able to do the rest. So as they were coming up to us in the line, greeting us, he shook my hand, and there was a check. So I think with that, what's the other side of the story?
Well, so we had this little apartment out in Olathe. That's where Randy's job was, and so we were moving to Olathe. And we had this tiny little apartment that you could just like spit across the room and it would hit the other wall. It was so little. And anyway, we didn't have a stick of furniture. We had your bed, your dresser. I don't know. I mean, we had some things. Yeah. We weren't desperate. We weren't going to.
Nice little 2-person table and a couple chairs.
Yeah, but we didn't have a couch. And so we had been shopping for this couch, and I just had this beautiful kind of couch picked out. It was creamy white, ivory. I know it's nuts who would pick out an ivory colored couch, but I did because it was beautiful. Yeah. But it was, it was $500, and at that time we had money. We had no money. Yep. And Randy, fast forward to the receiving line, we kind of...
Well, so the sofa was $500. We did not have $500. We just spent all of our money on the wedding and didn't have it, but God provides, doesn't he? So I opened this check later, pulled it out of my pocket, opened the check, and it was for the $500.
$500.
God does provide.
And we took that couch from Olathe to the apartment in Kansas City, Kansas.
Both of them.
And to our house on North 99th Terrace. And that couch was with us for years. And it was a beautiful couch, and my kids jumped on it, and they played on it, and they rolled off of it. And it was a
constant reminder of God's provision.
Yeah, his faithfulness. I mean, just to even think that, somebody would give us a $500 check, for our wedding, we were just like over the moon. It was so cool. It was so cool. And that leads us to 99th Terrace, our first home out of the apartment. Yes. Randy and I found out we were going to have our first baby in February of 1996. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yep.
Okay. And that was Corinne Noel. And we were living in the apartments at Brougham. And at the time, and Stan, I didn't know you then, but the lady who was the person who
the office manager,
she told us that it was like a no kids complex, like no children. And I don't know if it's because the building that we lived in had elderly people, and we were the youngest couple there, and because everybody around us, I'm talking, we were pretty young. And so anyway, we're like being told, well, this is a no child complex. And so then we're like, oh my goodness, we've got to find some place to live, and we got to do this
quick because we found that out in, I think, November, or no. We found that out just a few months before she was born.
Right,
think.
exactly, right. So we were
Yeah.
in a scramble to find a house.
July, August.
Yeah,
timeframe.
yeah. And so we started looking for houses all around Kansas City, Kansas, and because at that time, when we moved from Olathe to Kansas City, Kansas, you got the job at Board of Public Utilities, which was another just blessing. They had such good benefits there,
Mhm.
and it was such a blessing for you to get that job. It was another step in your career. And but we moved from Olathe to Wyandotte County because BPU required us to live in Wyandotte County.
Yes.
And so anyway, we start looking for houses in Wyandotte County in Kansas City, Kansas, and it was house after house, and we did get pre-approved. Right, we got pre-approved, so we knew how much we could spend, which wasn't very much because we were young and we needed more experience and.
Well,
Anyway.
and the price point that we were able to afford kept us out of the area that we wanted to be in, where Brandi's parents lived, where she, had been living in the Piper area.
Yeah.
But we were looking a little bit more in town. We were out in Turner.
Yeah, we
looking
looked
around in
everywhere.
there.
We
Yeah.
were looking for houses everywhere, and nothing was happening. Nothing was moving. My mom was praying. She was looking for houses. I mean, it was just kind of one of those things where it was like, Lord, we have to have a place to live. Where are we going to live? And we didn't want to move to another apartment. We just were believing that the Lord would provide a home for us. So one day, like I said, my mother had been praying for homes, and I have to say this.
Yes.
Okay. I carried, do you ever have dreams and, desires that you don't tell anybody about, but you have this little desire in your heart, and, it's just always been there, like this. I just had, when we were looking for houses, I just had this desire to have a house like the one that I grew up in. And the house that I grew up in was on North 70th Terrace in Kansas City, Kansas, back behind Washington High School. And so as we were looking for homes all of these months, months were going by, and I would pray, I would say, Lord, I don't need much. I would just like a house like the one that I grew up in on North 70th Terrace.
So what was your house like that you grew up in?
Well, it had 3 bedrooms. It had one bathroom. It had, you walked up the stairs or you walked down the stairs. So I don't know if that's called a split level, but you walked down the stairs. Yes, yeah. Okay. You walked up the stairs. And so anyway, my parents built that house. They built it for $30,000. It was brand new. Mm-hmm. And so, but that was my hope. Lord, just let me, just let us move into the house like North 70th Terrace. Yeah. And so anyway, we were looking. So my mom felt impressed in her classroom to say, does anybody know of someone who's trying to sell a house? And this hand goes up and it said, Mrs. Inglis, we're selling our house. And so my mom calls me at work that day and she said, Brandi, my students' parents are selling their house. You have to go look at this house. And it was in the area that we were hoping to move to. And I was like, oh, there's no way, we can't afford it. So, but I called Randy. I said, okay, Randy, there's a house. Mom wants us to go look at it. Let's go look at it.
Yep.
And so we get in the car after work. We're driving to this area. We go down the street. We take a left. It's a dead-end street. And the house is on the left. And I look at that house and I said, this is it. This is our house.
It was even the same color as the one that she grew up in.
On North 70th Terrace.
Even the same color.
And I grabbed his arm. like this in the car. I said, this is it. This is it. This is our house. And he's like, now, Brandi.
Don't give away our negotiating position.
And he said, just a minute. I'm like, no, Randy, this is our house. This is our house. And do you know that we bought that house?
God provided.
That house was on the market for 4 days. Within 4 days, we bought that house. We had been pre-approved that it was for sale by owner, and they sold it to us because we were a young couple getting ready to start a family. Yeah. And we lived there for 10 years, and it was an amazing house. We had wonderful neighbors. In fact, across the street, we met this young couple, and how many kids did they have at that time?
They had, I thought, 4.
Oh, I thought they only had 2.
maybe 2.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, they had 3. So it was Caitlin and Kirsten and Kyle.
That's right. They
Right.
had 3 kids,
Right.
and they were the Vicker family.
Yeah.
And at that time, we weren't going to church at Open Door, but I remember talking to Amy one day, and she was looking for a church, and I said, we visited that church Open Door across the street from where we live. Maybe you guys should go there. And the rest is history, because they've been firmly planted at Open Door for a long time. And then just a few years later, maybe it was not that much later, but Rick and Lindsay moved into the house right down the street from us. And
Yes.
so we actually just had great neighbors, and it was a great place to raise our children. The Lord blessed us so much. I mean, we had great times in that home. We had hard times in that home, but we definitely know that the Lord provided that home for us. And so that's part of our testimony. I mean, our testimony goes on. There's been so many answers to prayers for us, even this year. And I will end it with just a really neat little testimony. We had been looking for dogs, and we had been looking for dogs for weeks. And we were looking at King Charles Cavalier Spaniels,
Mm-hmm.
Cocker Spaniels, because I had always wanted a Cocker Spaniel since high school. I had my best friend had this darling little like blonde Cocker Spaniel, and I fell in love with Cocker Spaniels, and I'd wanted one my whole life. And so we were looking at that Spaniel family, and man, you talk about expensive. Like,
it's ridiculous how expensive they are.
Yeah, like $3,000 or $4,000 expensive, which
Not
we
happening.
don't have that money, And so I just kind of given up on the fact that we were going to get another dog for our little cockapoo Charlie. We were hoping to give him a little brother or sister, and I just given up on it. But what I didn't know is that Randy had been talking to his coworker. You say.
Well, and the coworker he and his wife have a 3-year-old daughter, and they were all excited. About 6 months ago, they bought their daughter a puppy, and it was a puppy, as puppies are, excitable and full of energy, and it wasn't a real good fit with the daughter. They decided that during the July weekend, the long weekend, just 3 weeks ago, that they would let the puppy out of the pen that they kept it in the kitchen. It would not leave the pen except to go out to the bathroom because their daughter was scared of it. Well, July 4th weekend, they decided we're going to keep the dog out. The daughter is going to have to figure out how to interact with the dog. The daughter spent the entire weekend up on a chair, scared to death of the dog. So my coworker called me on Monday following that experience and said, you mentioned that you were interested in finding a cocker. Are you still interested in a cocker? We have a 6-month-old Cocker Spaniel that we just feel like we can't keep anymore. Our daughter is not adjusting. So I was reluctant. I sent the text to the girls. Imagine this, the girls were ecstatic. They said, just don't tell Mom. We all knew about Brandi's love for cockers and her desire to have one for so many years. And we brought the dog home that night and into the backyard. And our oldest daughter, Corinne, brought Brandi out to the backyard.
And I'm like, it's a Cocker Spaniel!
Does God know the desires of our heart?
He does.
Yeah.
He really does. And, maybe some people will look at that as a coincidence. I don't look at it as a coincidence. I look at it as a blessing. Yes. I look at it as an answer to prayer. I look at it that the Lord knows the desires of our heart, and He wants to give us the desires of our heart, and He blesses us. Now, has He answered every single prayer that we've had, our married lives? No, He hasn't. But God is good. He is faithful.
Yes.
And we have stories to share just like that. and the ways that God has blessed us, all of the blessings he's given us, how good he is, and that's also a part of our story. And so I want you, as you're thinking about stories of grace, to look over those times in your life where you know that the Lord has answered prayers for you, that he's provided a way, that he's made a way, that he's given you a miracle. And I want you to think about sharing your story. So thank you so much for this time, and we hope that we've been an encouragement to you, and that you will eventually be an encouragement to others.
Yes.